I wanted to do this. The story is like this, that we've been having a class in the Rambam's Akdama, in Yiddish. Really, I was thinking that we should just do the same thing here in English because I don't have patience to do too many classes. Too much work. But anyways, and somehow from there we got into the discussion of this whole story of Moshe going to the Har Sinai, or the Eden going to Har Sinai, and then Moshe going up and down the mountain, or up and down to Shemayim, as the Medrash likes to say it more, and getting the Torah and bringing it back, and breaking the lichas and writing new ones, and the ganze masse of that, which is basically the story. It seems to be important, or should be important. I think probably the Rambam that we were trying to learn is ignoring that story here, because if you open the beginning, he basically doesn't discuss the story of Torah Shebiksav at all. So the Rambam was really busy with Torah in this version, in the beginning of Mishnah Torah. All he has is two steps, which is the Torah Shebal Peh being given to Moshe, the Torah and the mitzvahs, and he brings for this the pasuk. This is the pasuk in Shemais Perik Chav Dalet, in the end of Parshas Mishpatim. That's the pasuk that he has. So this is I don't remember. You're not up to date with all these shurim of that. But the point is that there's something called the story of the Torah being given to Moshe, and for Rambam Torah means Tareg mitzvahs, unlike for the truth. But for the Rambam Torah means Tareg mitzvahs, and their Perisham, the meaning of, or how to do the mitzvahs, which is what he calls Torah Shebal Peh. Everything else is not that. And this was given at some point to Moshe, and the time he gives for that, or at least the pasuk that he gives for that, is the pasuk in the end of Parshas Mishpatim, which says, "Ve'etna lecha," it's Vayemer Shem Moshe le'elei Yehuda vayesham ve'etna lecha slichas evan va'toyr va'mitzvah shekasavta le'roisam, and he makes a shtickle drash, or maybe he thinks it's the pshat. Torah is Torah Shebiksav, mitzvah is Torah Shebal Peh, or how to do the mitzvahs. Really, it makes sense with his pshat. We did a lot of classes to explain this, and that's but I'm not focusing on this right now. That's the story of Moshe getting the Torah. So everyone would think this is unlike what you would think, or maybe unlike what I would think that you would think. If someone asks you where it says in the Torah about Matan Torah, you would probably tell me like Parshas HaChodesh HaShlishi, what we learn on Shavuos, which everyone calls Matan Torah. But according to the Rambam, Matan Torah was not on Shavuos. That was some other random thing. Don't ask me what. There was some story with Aseres Adibris, nothing to do with giving the Tareg mitzvahs, because Torah is Tareg mitzvahs, not Aseres Adibris. So the Torah was given, as it says, and actually this is the language, Matan Torah, like the verb Nesina, next to the word Torah, occurred only once. I think there's one more time that it says, Ashenosan Hashem ben end of Ikra, but the verse, or the verb of Hashem giving the Torah to Moshe is in this pasuk. This is the only time we have the language Matan Torah in the Torah, and that's Ve'etna lecha slichas evan va'toyr va'mitzvah, which is, according to the basic outline of the story, is referring to the luchas. But since it says Torah va'mitzvah, somehow they understood, there's already a medrash like this, that it means the whole Torah, all Tarek mitzvahs, not only these luchas that we would say are called the Torah mitzvah, like Ibn Ezra or others claim is the pshat. So anyways, that's the pasuk of Matan Torah. So if someone asks when was the Torah given to Moshe, it was given to Moshe when he went up to Sinai, which is not when everyone was by Har Sinai. That was not on Sinai, that was around Sinai, I don't know, that was something else. Then according to the Rambam, that only functions as, it depends which Rambam. But anyways, according to the Rambam in Yesod Torah, that functions as a proof that Moshe was a Navi. That's all the point, the whole point of Shavuos. The actual giving of then now that we know there is a Navi, then he gives us mitzvahs. And that's he's not good as that over there. That's in a different. There's a different shot of the Rambam and Meir Nevechim, which has a whole different shot of that. But yeah, I know that they're the same thing. But first, I have to tell you what it's that. Okay. The point is, what I'm trying to get that this Torah mitzvahs, we have to think about that. But you have to have some story that makes sense. The Nesinas HaTorah, in other words, Tareg mitzvahs. The step one of that, Moshe kibel Torah Sinai, Musa kibel Moshe Torah Sinai, Zman she'ola lehar Sinai, after the whole story, Hayesh alei alei Yehuda vayesham ve'etna lecha, that's Har Sinai, and Moshe goes there by himself, right? Yeshua stays on the side, they're all staying there, right? That's why the Egel happened. But that's when Moshe gets the Torah. That's called Matan Torah to Moshe. That is the step one, and that is how I think that's also the pshat in the Gemara and the Midrashim. I don't think anyone disagrees with this. That's also what it seems to say in Sefer Parshas Devarim. If you look, Parshas Veschanan actually, it says, Moshe says this, gives all the story of Mamad Ar Sinai, and he says, very clearly that the mitzvahs are the step 2 of that story. There's a reason why that happened. I'm not going to get into that for now. And basically, he didn't go home, and Moshe stays there. That's how it says in Parshas Veschanan, and gets the Torah. Or the way it says in Parshas Mishpatim is more that Moshe went back up on the mountain after going down and making a bris. Whatever it is, if it was a step in between or not, that's different discussion. But the point is that Matan Torah is this thing, and this took 40 days, like it says. Where does it say? The end of that parsha, right? If you have to look in the end of Parshas Mishpatim, it says, this is not in the Rambam anymore, the Rambam doesn't care how long it took, but if you look in the end of Parshas Mishpatim, Shmois Perek, whatever, I don't know, the end of Mishpatim, it says that Moshe did that, V'al Moshe Elahar, I have it here, I should, and there's some 6 and 7 days that nobody knows what's going on with it, skip that pasuk. And then it says, for 40 days and 40 nights, he was Bahar, and apparently that's how long it took to study the mitzvahs, the Torah mitzvahs, Asher Kasafti Le'iraisam. Right after that, you have the story of the Mishkan, which maybe that's what he was taught over there, maybe not. I'm not mischayev that any of the texts of mitzvahs that say are meant to be read as if they happened then. I don't know. According to the Rambam, for sure not, because the Rambam would probably want you to think that the whole Torah, all Tarek mitzvahs, Moshe taught him Sefer HaMitzvahs, La Rambam, not La Rambam, Mishnah Torah. All the Tarek mitzvahs, Sipurisham, that's what he was taught. And that story has a end, right? That took 40 days, and it says clearly, if you go skip to the middle of Parshas Kisisa, it says, Veitin al Moshe kechaloisel daberita parasila. I should print you this paper, and you'll see how I confuse the order, why I do it like this. It says, let me give it to you. And it says, okay, so he gave him the lichas, but it says that as he finished to speak with him. That's what it says. Give me a second, I'll give you that thing. Why not? 2 of this. Making it easier for me. If you go to Parshas Mishpatim, Parshas Kisisa, basically, after this, Abraham you get Veikhle Triman, whole 50 parshas of the Mishkan. I don't know what's going on. And then you get the story of the Egel, really, but just press what it says, maybe there's no paper. I'm telling you. You skip to the continuation of this story, if you skip all the titles that were said in between or whenever, you get the continuation, you see that at the end of that, he gave him the lichas, and then, I skipped the whole story, but then he tells him that he did an egel, and he goes down, and whatever, long story, but basic points of the story are that they made an egel, and Hashem wanted to, Hashem first told Moshe to go, said 2 things to Moshe, they should go down, and that he's going to kill everyone. And Moshe, that's Vayichal Moshe. He gave a tefillah, he got God to calm down. And then Moshe wasn't calm and he killed everyone, which is not very, it's a weird story. And then the point is that after all of that, this is important for our purposes. So we have this like in between. It says tefillahs over there in between, which are problematic for the story that we want to get. But in any case, after all of that, after all of the whole story of Moshe, doing all of the things over there, it says the next day in Machras, "Ver Moshe Elam, atem chatasim chata gedoyle, va'ata elel Hashem ilay chapre ba'at chataschem." So this is interesting. It says Moshe is saying, "You've done a great sin. Now I'm going to go back to God and try to be mechaper for your sin." It seems like there's a basic problem here because he did that already before he went down in the story. But in any case, that's Moshe going. It says Elel Hashem, so it seems to be similar to the Alei Hashem. Alei is going back to the mountain, and we have the tefillah that he said. That's and Hashem saying, okay, not clear what he says, but basically lets it move forward. And then we have a whole more long parsha, which is a very important parsha, because it's the parsha of the Shlishis Midas Rachmim, which we have to know. But it's a whole long parsha. Seems to be, basically, you could put all of this into the category of tefillah, right? Moshe, Hashem says to Moshe, you go, and Moshe says no, and he says, there's a whole masa with Lowy lebekirbecha, kena lebekirbecha, panei alechu, loy panei alechu, and then is drachecha. All these things seem to be one long dialogue of tefillah. I don't know. At least I think of it as something to do with tefillah, something to do with Hashem not wanting to do what He originally promised them, and Moshe trying to get him to go back, or let's change it, or let's not change it so much. Very hard to figure out the structure of what's going on, but that's something like that is going on, okay? And then in the middle of that, but we could assume it as a separate story. So just to be very simple, we have story number 1 in my today's numbers is Moshe went for 40 days. It took 40 days. It took 40 days. There were 7 days before, but skip those 7 days. They're not relevant. But it took 40 days. He was for 40 days learning the Torah. Well, apparently it says he spoke to him. He told him some mitzvahs, or maybe all the mitzvahs, or maybe whichever mitzvahs we want to imagine him saying.
People who ask why it took so long. It takes time to know now.
Yeah, there's a very famous Ibn Ezra that has very beautifully language. We're like, why does it take so long? He says, well, have you ever tried to learn something in your life? It's of course this stupid question. And he of course assumes that Hashem didn't just tell him, do this and don't do that. That might take 2 days, but He told him what it means and so on. Yeah. Point is, it's a good question, but then there's this whole story of very long story here of Hashem Moshe handling the whole story, and then there's a Nachamasa. Nachamasa is it's part of that story, so it's probably part of the story. But the third story here seems to be is Yemei Moshe Psalacha, right? And he tells him the next morning. There's a whole morning. It seems to be rephrasing what happened in the beginning. Also in the morning, I'm going to come on the mountain. There's a whole Ishli Aliyimach, very similar to the first time. We're going to do a redo of the whole thing, maybe a B'tzina, not so B'feresi, but basically same thing. We're going to do a lichas, and in the middle we have this Hashem Harachem V'chana, don't ask me. But the point is, it seems to be very clearly a repeat of that. And he says, Inech Kodes Bris. This bris is the same bris that I'm assuming that it's the same bris that he was promised in the beginning. Hashem Lekene Kodes Amane Bris B'charev are the same thing that the original Aseres Adibris were about, lichas abris. And then there's a repeat of the Torah. I skipped that. A repeat of Parshas Mishpatim, sort of. But in any case, and then it's finished. It says, so this is the same bris, but it's the second one. It didn't doing it again. And then we have another 40 days. So that's not the same Ksav Lucha as Moshe. Maybe there's 2 things being written here, the Luchas and some book. Not getting it, that's another discussion. Yes, if there was a Sefer Bris before, and here also there seems to be a second Sefer Bris and a second Luchas. There were 2 Luchas and 2 Sefer Bris. That's how I think the Pshat is. I don't know. I haven't looked how everyone understands it. But the interesting thing to our purposes today is that there's a repeat. This is very clearly a repeat of the story. It's very clearly formulated in that way. There's a repeat. There was this bris that Hashem made with Yidden and Mishpatim right before we started. There's the whole story, Dama bris and the Mitzayva and Avonim and whatever. There's a whole bris, and then this bris was cancelled. Obviously, they did the egel. It seems like a lot of the dialogue that Moshe is trying to get Hashem is to uncancel it or to redo it. And then it was actually redone after the whole Yidgul Midas and everything. It says in Anachkares Bris. Okay, we'll do it. Let's write it down again. Let's write the lichas again. Basically, all part of the same thing. And that also took 40 days. Very clearly, it's also 40 days. It says 2 things that are added in this 40 days. Visham Im Hashem Arba'im Yoim. Before it just said Vayim. What did it say? Vayim Moshe Bahar. Now he's not Bahar. He's Im Hashem. Interesting. I don't know. Maybe it means the same thing, but it's interesting. And another thing that was added is that he didn't eat and drink. Lechem le'ochel le'mayim le'shasa. Nish gegessen, nish getrinken for 40 days. Maybe we would assume that it happened the first time also, but it says here. And he wrote the lichas. Hashem wrote the lichas, I'm assuming, I understand. And that's all. Then there's a story of him coming down, and this time there was no egel. Basically, there's a whole story of the masveh. But I think maybe one of the messages of that story that this time there wasn't this whole. He didn't see what he saw last time. Right, the first time he came down and there was tzuris, and there there's all said, and he tells them the mitzvahs. Also, what is he exactly telling him? I don't know. I'm not getting into the content of these things. Maybe it's the Mishkan, maybe it's the Parshas Mishpatim. One of these two things, probably. Or maybe it's all the mitzvahs. However, maybe it's like even clearly for the rest of his life he did that. I don't know. Kitzur HaMaisa is that what do I want out of this whole thing? That here there's mainly two. There's not mainly for sure. Abib Shat. There's 2 40-day sets, 40-day matzavim. One is when he goes l'chatchila l'Har Sinai, and the second one is after Psalecha, apparently, or maybe not. I don't know. But the second one seems to be connected with v'yichtav el-luchas. Seems to be connected with the writing the luchas again. And like Devan Ezra would have to ask why they have to do it again. So since they forgot, so you have to repeat the whole thing. I don't know. That's what it says in Parshas Kesissa and Parshas Mishpatim. What? It's not clear that should be different content because it's a good question. Because I mean, if you want to you do want to think about the content, so there is like a parsha that seems to be the repeat. Or maybe it's not as complete, but like there's in Parshas Kesissa, there's the whole shtickle Shmarlecha. Shomer es Chodesh Ovev and Shmer Lecha Sadvar Meile and so on, which lists a whole bunch of mitzvahs, most of which are repeat word for word from Parshas Mishpatim, which seems to be like part of the Divrei Bris over there, and it repeats it. And it seems, I would assume that this is just the same thing, repeat English. And since, again, I gave a whole class 2 weeks ago about this, that the main point in the writing the Torah and all these parshas is not that we should know the mitzvahs. That's one thing, but the main part of it is being like a shtar chof, like a shtar bris, like the Chazal say on the lichas that he broke the ksuba. Now you don't have to do it. So it's not really about the rewriting of everything. It's not because he forgot. That would be like another level of drash or something. But the simple pshat is that it's like a shtar, like you rip the check and then you have to rewrite the whole thing. Like why do I have to rewrite the whole thing? It's the same number on the check. Well, yeah, but that one didn't work. Now this one's going to work, and you got to do all the details for all the details to work. So the rewriting and relearning, and somehow we would, again, the 40 days, I don't know, maybe it takes 40 days. It doesn't say why it takes 40 days. Right? But
would it also be why we don't really mention it in the verb? We're not, like the ego said it's a separate type of verb because that was before the new bris. So like when we were talking about cholesterol, how bad they are.
It mentions the ego.
It does mention it, but like in almost a separate.
Sefer Dvarim doesn't seem to think. See, it's very interesting. In Sefer Shemot, it's very clearly the story of the bris being ruined, as far as I can understand. I mean, the Ramban says I didn't make it up, and then the redo of the bris, and maybe even Vayikra is part of that. Whatever, we can say a lot of Torahs. Sefer Dvarim doesn't say this story. It says something else. It's Tamaz doing a redo of the whole bris, right? In the parshas where we're up to now, like Netzavim, it's redoing the whole thing. Not because it was ruined, just because like it was a long time ago.
Because they're really starting it then. Right? It seems more like it's like a new.
Maybe
they're really starting it then.
Either because it's all pushed off because of the meraglim. Maybe the big thing is Sefer Dvarim. The big cut, the big thing that ruins things is the meraglim. Really, that's what the whole story of Parshas Dvarim is about. Because in other words, the fact that the Dor HaMidbar is not the Dor, that's not the problem of Parshas Kesissa. They're still all in the.
Right.
Yeah, this is another thing that we have to think of.
I'm just trying to say that you would comment on cholesterol later, let's say, like since it's a new bris, but you still messed up on these later things because that's something about you. The previous stuff we changed. Let's say we changed things for that or whatever. It's a new bris now. But those things, there's no new bris since the Meraglim, right? So it's like a fault that still exists more than the ego.
I'm not sure. It's interesting. I don't know. I was thinking today because people were worrying that there isn't really. I don't know. I don't know to what extent this is, or maybe this is all alumnus. And in reality, it's like, what's the difference if you call it a new bris? It's the same kind of. I don't know. Like the fact that we need another lechas is itself a problem. I don't know. Like I know. Not sure. I understand.
When you say Vayikra was the new bris, like something different. The
Fornis
says the idea that the Mishkan came only.
Right. There's medrash that might say that. Right.
There's like new content because of that.
Right. Okay, but that's really a question of content. We have to get to that. But right now, I'm just trying to get the form of the thing. The point is like this. All this is all Akdama to something, but that's left to do one more Akdama. Then there's Sefer Dvarim. In Sefer Dvarim, there is one very big difference in Parshas Ekev mainly. In Parshas V'Schana we already discussed, it doesn't have this whole long, doesn't give you the whole detail of 40 days and everything. It's just like Hashem gave the Aseres Dibros to Yidden and the rest of the mitzvahs to Moshe. That's all it says there. Then if you come to Parshas Ekev, and remember, like you're saying, Parshas Ekev's message is something like, you're a bunch of very hard, difficult people to deal with, but we do deal with you. It gets chanayat. It just don't be too hard, something like that. Ramban in the beginning of the Dvarim says that the reason why it repeats all the problems is, like it says in the pasuk, this is Ki'imcha aslicha leman tivore, and the Ramban's lashon is Ki aslicha hi ezer me Hashem ba'avedosai. This is a Rambamistic thought also. In other words, the fact that there's slicha or tshuva, more broadly, but that God is moichel, is just because most people are not perfect. All people are not perfect. If someone's perfect, there's something wrong with them. And being like on bad terms all the time is not good. So, in order so we should be able to fear you, you need to be moichelas. I think that's like a different new reading into what Moshe keeps on saying, which is like, your planet is going to be destroyed, you're must. Like Moshe always, you'll notice that Moshe almost never, besides for once, but almost never bargains with Hashem. He almost never like says, please help us. It's always like, you better help us or else. He always threatens. Almost, I think once in Parshas V'Schana he tried to do the nice tefillah and Hashem said, no, you're not, that's not for you. You're supposed to speak like a man.
That was person.
Yeah.
I'll go for it. You can't do this.
It's not your job. You're not a David HaMelech like tefillah la'ani. It's a whole different mahala. His malach was always, listen, and even like they're saying, like twice, that's Parshas Kisisa twice. First he says, Mitzrayim, like we had this whole thing going on with Mitzrayim, you're strong to Mitzrayim, you're ruining the whole thing, they're all going to say, this guy's a loser. And then he comes and at the second time, or however you understand the two stories, is like, either you're moichel yidden or else I'm quitting and you take care of them yourself. And Hashem says, you did nothing wrong. Why are you quitting? Like, it's not. You go take you. No, you're not put there. You gotta still do his job. And then he start. The whole argument is about like who has to do the job. Is it Hashem's job or Moshe's job to take care of these problematic people, right? And in Sefer Dvarim also, that seems to be both of these things. Moshe is sort of like complaining to them, or I had to daven for you so much. Like 40 days, 40 nights, I was standing and davening for you, and like Hashem has been, you're not so good. It's all berachmim and chesadim. There's these both things. But the point is, how did I get to this? Point is, I was saying that Ramban is like under Musar, more Musadic and like understanding is that the point of all of this is that we need to know that Hashem is Meichel and was Meichel for 1,000 times. So otherwise, we can't go on. So it's not like rephrases the whole like Moshe seems to say Musar, like you're such bad people. Mamre Misim, you've never been good. From the first day, I knew that you're the wrong nation. God should have chosen someone else. Whatever. All of these things. And the Ramban says this is not to put you down; it's to put you up. It's to say, look, like Rashi says in Parshas Netzavim, first Rashi in Parshas Netzavim. Yeah, and if we would not have had this whole base story of like, for all our bad things, we still survived, we would not be able to survive. So one of the big part of the story is that you did all these bad things, and it took some work. Yes, you have to Moshe for working so hard and fasting 40 days, but tachlis it worked. And this can be the same in the future. Like you shouldn't be. It's also like I think he's saying it's also a personal thing. Like people that don't believe in forgiveness don't become God. Some people are very worried. It's going to make you more lenient, and you're not going to take things seriously. But that's not really the truth most of the time. There are a few people that are chayte because Yom Kippur is going to save them. There's a lot more people that are not becoming better because they think that they can't become better, which is again a rephrasing, or because God won't forgive them, or whatever. It's a much bigger problem. Right.
When you talk to them, it's more that you're not going to instantly be good. Whatever, it might play out in action. That's class. Like you're not really up to par.
Maybe next year.
Other things happen, but the point is like you're not going to. Right, people look at it as like a scorecard. Like there's the good actions and bad actions. Like not as much as like where do you stand in general. So, that's the point. Here's class. Like yeah, you're a nation. So it's just not. You don't instantly become this great nation.
Okay.
Yet. So actions come out of that. So same thing with people. It's like not instantly become anything. You have to like work on it.
Okay. We still didn't become that, so I don't know. Point is, but I was in the middle of something. Point is, okay, so that special Sekev has this drasha that you're such bad people. And remember that you're not. It's not like you were chosen because you're the best. You were chosen because of accidents of history, and Misham there was a Shavua, Misham is a Shavua, Shenish B'Lav V'Seichem, all kinds of things. Don't think you're so great. And I have a bunch of proofs. He comes with receipts, right? That's the basic. Like I've got a bunch of receipts to show you, to remind you how not great you are. These are like being over on the Tshuva. Maybe Moshe was allowed to. And one of them is like, and I think part of it is also Moshe's personal. Like I've worked so hard for you. Please, like, start listening already. And one of them is like Bechorev, Hashem was so mad at you. He wanted to kill you. And there he gives this rephrasing of the same story. That's on this page. When I went up to the mountain, see, that's what the luchas are, the bris hashkaras Hashem. This is going back to what it says in the end of Mishpatim, right? You have the same thing here. If you want. It's in page, I didn't make numbers. It's here somewhere. I don't know. Where does it say? It's here. You have it already? One of these pages. Yeah. And it says it's by the way, this is one of the places where the Vadim is the closest to the language of Shema. So I read it today. It seems mamish the same thing. It says I went up to the mountain. I was in the Va'eshev Bahar Arba'im Yem Va'Ba'im Laila. He adds this thing that over there we only saw in the second time. Lechem Lechalti Ma'am Leshisi. But again, and at the end, right? We could assume at the end. It says beferish at the end. He gave me the luchas, and then suddenly we have this fashla of the egel. He tells me to go down. He tells me he's going to kill you, and I actually went down. Here he skips the whole Vaychal Moshe. Doesn't say here, which I have theories about. Maybe it wasn't on this side, because it makes more sense to me the way it says here. But anyways, in Sefer Shemos right here, there's Vaychal Moshe Vayinochem Hashem, which is very funny because if you're ready Vayinochem Hashem, why does it go down? So maybe that really happened later. And the order here is more like chronologically accurate. I don't know.
I'm trying to figure out how the words line up.
Yeah, the words are a lot of words.
What I'm saying is where.
Oh, the next page?
Yeah.
I don't know. It should be on the other side, probably. No. I don't know. It says Vayemei Hashem Elai. That's the next one. Where did he go?
Exactly that one.
Right there.
That's here. It goes like this. Yeah. I have to put a staple here. And then Bekitzer Va'efim V'ered V'nahar, and then I noticed. The important thing is in this paragraph that I need to get to. And I noticed that you've done the egel, so I broke the luchas. This is Moshe's confession that he did it. Yes, I did it myself. And then after that, this is interesting, but this is not something that we had in Sefer Shemos, or not clearly in this kind of structure. So I went back to Hashem, and I fell for him as in the first, like Kurishayna, I'm assuming means like the first 40 days that I was there, just to learn the Torah. Just like I was there in the 40 days to learn the Torah, I did it again. Again, and I was crying or begging. I was afraid. I noticed what happened, and then it worked. It worked. And actually, a shtickle later, he actually gives the content of his tefillah. I think most Mefarshim understand that this is the same time. It's just giving the actual tefillah. It says, right? It's those that I just told you about. And here we have the tefillah that he said, that it says by Vayichal. So that's why I think that this is a better order. Or I understand it. Right. This is basically the same tefillah. Maybe there's a few different words that are different, but
when is the first time they say that he doesn't mention lechem
which?
Where does he not mention lechem and mayim?
Not mention Vayichal?
No, lechem and mayim.
Oh, in Parshas Mishpatim, when it says that he went in the second page on this thing, and actually in the first page, right? In Parshas Mishpatim, it says Vayev Moshe b'toich Onan, Vayi Moshe bahar Rabbaim Yem V'Rabbaim Laila. It doesn't say anything about eating or drinking.
I think maybe
it actually makes sense because before that's like saying the story when in the beginning he didn't yet not eat and not drink. He was just going. Afterwards, like, we were there for 40 days.
At that time,
no, and it only says, What was scared? Oh, because they didn't have food in the
Maybe
midbar.
they thought he was some sort of god or something, so that's not a chiddush that he wasn't. Like, you have to like tell them like.
And then the
He
next
told me
time,
that, like,
when did it say
I
Vayisham
mean-
Hashem by the Lichas Shnias? It says.
But then he's like, and
Hello,
I did,
son.
and I did something right. In that time, they were like, they
I
thought
don't
him
know.
like some sort of god. So it's like, he wanted them to think that I really need to normally eat. Like, he's not interested in telling them I didn't. They think he's almost whatever. He's gone up to whatever.
That was the massive with the ego.
Later on,
Interesting.
later on, he's like, okay, and you know I'm human, and I still didn't eat. Like once you look at me as a human, I can tell you, I didn't eat.
Man, okay, maybe. My point is, no, I don't have another point. I'm just saying, but that's the story. So there's again, and over here we have that he went for 40 days to get the luchas. And then there's another story of the second 40 days. This is not the story that he went to get the second luchas for 40 days. It might say here, I don't see it here. But what it does say that for 40 days he was mispalel, and it seems like some of Hashem say that here the lechem lechalti mam shtisi is purposely. Not I was in heaven for 40 days, I didn't have to eat. I never fasted for 40 days, maybe ate at night. It doesn't says I don't know. But they seem to understand that he made a hunger strike or a fast. All as part of his tefillah, and this tefillah that it says is only like 10 lines, whatever. I don't know how you say it for 40 days, but we have the same Ibn Ezra. Tefillah, listen, that's such a simple thing.
Yeah.
It's famous Gebur and Bruchas, right? Klim marach les, yes, and Moshe Rabbeinu. Yeah.
The Rambam
Does it take 40 days to say that tefillah?
The Rambam also says, right? He says in Mary.
Said it every day again.
He says about that ticha b'shem. He says like basically like don't just. You get it?
I know, I gotta give a class on it yesterday. I don't know.
I would say, but it's saying right. He's trying to say is that tefillah is not just.
But over there, he's not. So the Rambam, but that's not about tefillah. Then it's about Asagas Hashem. That's the parasha of
But isn't that why the
Kisisa.
tefillah is always they're gonna verge on that, so you're gonna have to.
Maybe.
So that's why it makes sense.
You could say that, but that like it's a. Yeah, that's a pshat that I would want to make. But get to, and then it says,
Doesn't say was he fasting 40 days for the tefillah?
it says, "Vesnapa lefnei Hashem karishayna arba'im yom b'vim la'elo lechem le'chalti ma'am l'shsisi al kol chatasichem asher chatosem la'asara b'nei Hashem ki agarti whatever." That's in this in Parshas Ekev. That's in there.
Okay.
It says that he was misspelled for 40 days. This is very different. It's very different, by the way, because it's a whole different kind of concept of 40 days. First 40 days, like Hashem calls them, it says, come, I'll teach you for 40 days. Okay, you don't have to eat. He's just learning Torah. Was enough. Then here, Moshe is complaining, like, I had to stand there for 40 days with no food, all because I was afraid of God's wrath, like, he's going to kill you. And I had to, like, I was koch nefesh, I couldn't eat, I don't have time. It's a whole different, like, kind of 40 days, right? And then you have the story of the Lichas Shnias over here. Doesn't say anything about 40 days. Just says he gave it to him and he put it in an oven. It says afterwards, this is interesting. Then there's a story. I skipped the whole shtickle over there. Afterwards, after the Menaglim, it says, it seems, I would think that this is again, that's I think what the Rambam says, it's again talking about the same 40 days that it was mispal. Why it says there, it's basically again repeating that he worked so hard for you. Now, this is Adkan, what I think it says. What the rabbis think it says is, and they mostly are based on, so this is how the Yaakov Emden describes it in Seder Olam. Turns out we have 3 descriptions of 40 days. Forget about the last one here. Even without that, we have 3 different descriptions of 40 days. Because we have 40 days in Sefer, in Parshas Mishpatim, where he's learning the Torah. 40 days in Parshas Mishpatim, where he's getting the luchas, second time, right? Luchas Shtanis, Luchas Shnes, which we might interpret that this last pasuk in Parshas Ekev is also referring to that. Maybe yes, maybe not. Doesn't really matter. That's not needed. And then we have a whole third pshat of 40 days where he's mispalel. It's a whole different mahalach. It's a whole different thing.
Nothing in between.
So now come the Seder Olam basically says, and the Pirkei Rebbe Lezer, but Seder Olam is probably not the earliest source. Seder Olam says, so turns out, and then Medrash Nachuma, whatever, the earlier Medrashim, turns out that there were 120 days that Moshe was in this business. 40, 40, and 40. And then someone calculated that sort of if you count 120 days from Zayin Sivan, you end up somehow, there's days, don't worry about 1 or 2 days up and down, because you're going to go crazy. You're going to become Tosfos and write a whole Umad of Tosfos and figure out how exactly those days work out. But the point is, if you count, it turns out that there's about 120 days, basically, between Zayin Sivan and Yud Tishrei. Does that add up? I mean, think about it. 120 days is what?
Summer.
3 times 40 or 4 times 30, right? In other words, 4 whole months, assuming every month is 30 days. It's about 3 days off, right? Because Zayin to Yud, we have to add in 2 days somewhere. So the Tanchuma added 2 days somewhere. They all found ways around this problem, or we could make Chadash B'Chasayrim, then we're missing days. The point is, think about it. It's Yud, basically Yud Sivan to Yud Tishrei. Forget about the Zayin Sivan, right? That's 4 months, 120 days. That's a whole summer, yeah. That's what he spent his summer vacation doing. But basically, it turns out that the last day was Yom Kippur. And then we have a nice pshat on how Yom Kippur came to be on that day. This is a pshat that says in Seder Olam and in Medrash Nechama and in some other Medrash. It doesn't say in Talmud Bavli as far as I can tell. But the Rambam in Moreh Nevuchim in the Perek about Yom Kippur said that he assumes that this is actually the reason why Yom Kippur is on the 10th day of Tishrei, because this was the day that Moshe came back. So there's a problem here. This is a pshat of Yom Kippur. You didn't know. These people at least assume, this Medrash or this Rambam assumed that Me'adim have to have an historical reason. Rosh Hashanah is the one that stays without. It's a problem. But every other one has an historical. Sukkot also nothing happened at that time. It's L'zeicha the Midbar, but not Shaykh. But anyways, so whatever. That's why I'm at some point I say well, no, it's the other way around. There's only one Yom Tov that has an historical reason in the Torah. All the other ones don't. For the day, right? Not for what it symbolizes. But Shavuos doesn't say anything, and then Sukkot doesn't say anything, so it's only a Pesach. So what do you...
Sukkot also is just appropriate time to be Karbanos, right?
Could be a lot of things, but it doesn't say that because in this day something happened, therefore in this day you should make Sukkot. That doesn't say anywhere. Even we still don't have the Shtikl Gra, whatever, there's no normal shot for that. In any case, the Rambam assumed that took this matter seriously and said that this is why Kippur is on that day. Why? Because, and this is how the Medrash actually added in. The Medrash Beferish, and they even dashed in the Parsha. I'm not going to get into that. It's too complicated. Point is they understood that on this last day Moshe is coming down, and basically all of this time somehow we have this problem of this Chatel L'Toila, and it says after V'salachta Lavinenu, he's trying to get the Slicha, and somehow this is the last part of the Slicha, and then they know when he comes back with the Luchas, they see we're back on schedule, so that's the day of the Slicha, and therefore forever every year the Aseres Tishrei becomes a day of Slicha. Atkan the Medrash that it's all based on this whole Shtikl Torah, figuring out that there's 3 times 40 days, which doesn't say anywhere. Just happens if you put together 2 different stories and you count up all the days, and it seems like that's what should happen. That is very important. Why is that very important? Because it gives us a source to think about this whole Yom Kippur business, according to how we understand this whole story. Now we don't understand 2 things. First, we didn't understand Yom Kippur, and now we don't understand also the whole story of the Luchas. Because in other words, let me explain a little better. It's not only about there was some story, some people had a chet, and then there was some slicha, and happened to be on this day. So any other person that has a chet and slicha should be on this day. There's definitely something much more central than that. In that this thing that they're trying to accomplish, called this bris or this Torah or this luchas, this whole thing, is actually what needs to be accomplished in the world. And then, if it didn't work out, that means it didn't work out. And then, if somehow it did work out, then we have to learn from this whole parsha. And we see, at least the way we do it, when we do slichas, we keep on, basically the mekor of slichas is from this parsha, right? From the whole Yidgol Midas and all of that. So it's basically trying to work with what says, and what said, and what was happened in this story in order to solve the same problem that this story has. That's how I think it's supposed to be understood. And now, just what I was thinking, makes sense? What I was thinking is something like this, or at least this gives me a place. In other words, everything has to have a doesn't have to, but everything has a parsha, in the Torah, which is the parshas Chodesh Elul and Yom Kippur is this parsha. Okay, this is the parsha of Avodas Yom Kippur, but that's not helping us for this. for theology. That's for if you want to do the halachas of how many kabbalas you have to do. So it seems to me that there's, like we see here, there's different things, and there's a whole another. But like we see here, there's different things on how, like, already in like this theater, or this two different focuses of Sefer Shemais and Sefer Devarim about what happened in these 40 days. So I think that this has to do with the machlokas, or different ways of understanding of what happens in these 40 days. So one thing I wanted to say, it's interesting, like you said that maybe Chazal will write that we need only 10 days. So Aseres Tshuva has no makar. Very interesting. And the drushes that Chazal say are really far-fetched, like Veigav Hashem es novel, Aseres Hayom no shine. No, nothing to do with anything. When Aseres Tshuva, okay, but why? There's no why, right? And what they seem not to be thinking of this. What they seem to be thinking, all these Gemaras of Aseres Tshuva, I don't have, someone should like show me that I'm wrong, but I think that they're thinking more of this. What it seems to say in Masechtas Rosh Hashanah, like the Litvish Prat of Rosh Hashanah. There's a din in Rosh Hashanah, between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, we're not sure, it starts, it's different shittas, but basically there's some kind of din in Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and therefore, what you should do is do Tshuva. Man, how do you do Tshuva? Whatever. That's Aseres Tshuva is basically about that. That's how I understand it. Very basic. But then, all these Yidden that were doing Tkiyas Shofar and Elul and Slichas and Elul, which is very ancient minhag, both of these minhagim are at least from 1,000 years old, were not invented recently. And so they were not invented by Litvaks. Because the Litvak Shitta, you see, what I'm saying is like this. So if you're a Litvak that goes with Pshat of the Gemara, which is what Litvaks are supposed to do, then you have like the Rosh Hashanah, Chasima, Yom Kippur, you have to do Tshuva for 10 days. So for 10 days you can do Tshuva like that. But if you're a Medrash Yid, or like a Eretz Yisrael kind of minhag Eretz Yisrael, and the Jews of the Medrash, they understood that what do you mean Yom Kippur is not stam like the first day of Tishrei. There's the din on the 10th day, and therefore we have to do Tshuva. They had this whole like broad story of like, well, this is really the story of Moshe going to the mountain for 40 days, and for another 40 days, and for another 40 days, and all of these back and forth, which with up the mountain and down the mountain, and Panecha Elchem, and is God a better leader? Is Moshe a better leader? All of these things. Is God really a God of B'des Hadin? Is he a God of B'des Harachmim? How do all these things work? And then they say, well, now our understanding of Yom Kippur is not your understanding of Yom Adin. It doesn't say anything about Yom Adin here. What it says about Yom HaSlicha, or it says about this, like again, like I said before, it's not really about like, okay, we had a problem, we have to have Slicha. It's really about how do we formulate, basically about the Torah, right? How do we get the Torah to work, right? Because that Egel just means the Torah didn't work. Again, it's like we punished you by breaking the halachas. Like this was nothing to cover this check. I mean, obviously it didn't work. The thing bounced, so bye, go back, let me start again. So it's about how to make the thing work, and like Moshe says, and this is like probably the most beautiful pasuk in the whole Torah. Oh, it's very similar to what it says in Sefer Shemos, right? And Moshe says, "Re'eyato emr elai halas amazeh, va'ato lo yadatoni es asher tishlach imi." Right? You're not allowed to say pasukim by heart, because then you make mistakes. You have to read it. Yeah, that's what it says. Moshe is basically saying, he's saying, look, and the Rambam reads it like this, and you've told me to halas amazeh. Okay, no problem, but you didn't tell me how. He told me Yadaticha b'Shem, which seems to be connected with this, I'm not sure. But if that's true, please tell me what your ways are, I will know you. In other words, you said Metzias Chaim, but that was a lie. I know Metzias Chaim. What kind of Metzias Chaim is this if I don't know how to explain it, if I don't know it at all? Says the Rambam, since you told me to lead, this is your nation, you told me to lead your nation, well, you've got to tell me how. So tell me what kind of God you are. The Rambam says you're Ta'arim, I need to know your attributes or your actions, your midas, whatever. I'm not getting into that. I need to know what kind of God you are for these people, or what kind of leader you are. Then I can do it. Of course, God leading means Moshe leading this. Anyways, but I need to know your ways. Basically, I need to know your Yidgol Midas, which is the ways in which leadership of humans happens, which is ascribed to God. And if you know that, then you could be Moshe. But this is like I said before, all of Moshe's tefillas have this. There's always a drisha. He's always a teveh bepeh. He's never like please, you've told me something, now you gotta fulfill your promise. And he could have been like, well, I guess not. I guess I can do it without. No, you can't do it without. You told me how the summer said, okay, now we need instructions. And it worked, right? He says, no problem. And then he gets a lot of information out of God after all of those back and forth there that I don't understand. But he does get a lot of stuff out of it. And it's all by out of this demand that he's making, that you've told me something, you've given me a job, but you've not given me the tools to do the job, so tell me the tools. And this is really the understanding that the Medrash has of Yom Kippur, I think, or of this whole process. Like, we've got a job, okay, very nice, we got a Torah and Shavuos, but we don't know how to do it. The proof of that is in the pudding, it's in the burnt egg, proof that we don't know how to do it. We didn't know it. Maybe we thought we did. We're not so... I hadn't thought it was a good idea. Turned out it wasn't a good idea. Okay, so can you tell me what the correct idea is? I think even Moshe did some mistakes in that story. And so tell me what it is. And that's what we have to learn for another 40 days. Or maybe we have to daven for another 40 days, like the Mishnah Torah says. Maybe it's not only about learning stuff, maybe it's also about like working with them and whatever Vesnape Lifnei Hashem is supposed to mean. Very interesting words. What does it mean Vesnape Lifnei Hashem? I fell before him or something. Like Tachnon. And we have to figure out how to do it. Now that doesn't take 10 days. That takes 40 days at least. Maybe it takes 80 days if we count twice or however you count it. And then you could blow shofar for 40 days straight, or for, I don't know why we don't blow shofar in Aseres Tshuva. I still never understood that. It says, like they say, it's not a minhag, but it should be for all 40 days. It's like because we already did Rosh Hashanah, it's like a mitzvah, already had enough 100 koheles twice. That's why.
After that. It's still waiting.
Because the whole Elul thing ruins it. That's the problem.
You have a whole build up and then you can do it afterwards. You can do it before that.
Only other time you get excited.
You tailgate before the game, not after the game, right?
The whole in the yeshivish way of doing Elul so seriously, Aseres Tshuva gets ruined because it's like another time.
Listen, theoretically, it's great.
It's supposed to be like the shofar starts it, and then you're supposed to wake up. Then, right? You're not waking. We're already trying to wake up for 30 days.
They're too concerned that Rosh Hashanah Yemei didn't. Very concerned.
Anyway, so my shtickle Torah is that this is one shtickle. I'll tell you a nicer way, a shorter way of saying it. That this like 40-day process, this whole story, and it says beferish, like it says that if Haigon has a tshuva, it was asked if they say slichas and Aseres Tshuva or slichas. Says yeah. Some people say from the Chodesh Elul because they say that Moshe went to the Har Chodesh Elul. Same thing with shofar. Everyone, the source, like it's true. Like we have to really take seriously when people say the source of a minhag is a medrash. And people say, well, the medrash. But what it means is that the conception that this medrash has is what makes us do this minhag. And it's not that other people say, well, this is lachana for Rosh Hashanah. No, that's not. If that would be the conception, we wouldn't have made up this minhag. We made up this minhag because we were like dreaming of this idea of Moshe going to the mountain and getting a way for us to live from God, like the a way which we could walk with. And that's a very good thing. So we lost shofar. We're so excited. And you thought that shofar does to remind us to the tshuva. But it doesn't say anywhere, none of the sources, the early sources about shofar and El say that. The first source is the Pirkei Rebbe Eliezer, very famous, brought in the Tar. And the Tar adds, Kadesh Yasek Tshuva. I don't know who told him that. And what it says in the Pirkei Rebbe Eliezer is, it doesn't say anything. It says that they blow shofar to let everyone know that Moshe is going up the mountain. V'akitshbrachen is ale boiseh shofar, and lezech is we blow shofar and Chodesh Elul. And I think but the most simple thing it means is that when the first time Moshe went to the mountain, there were big shofar, right? Because shofar from Mountain Torah. So they did another one. Now, very similarly to the way the first luchas are said to have been Valuchas Mas Elihim, was the Rambam says natural, but anyways, it was God made the luchas, and the second time Moshe had to do it. Same thing. The first time God blew shofar himself. Second time we had to blow shofar ourselves, because that's the way that we figured out to do better. We're gonna do things ourselves.
Made or just wrote?
No, he didn't write. None of them he wrote, at least according to how I understand. None of them he wrote. God wrote both of them. I'm not saying what it says, not what actually happened. God wrote both. Whatever. God does everything. God wrote both of them. But the first one, it doesn't say that Moshe made. The second one, it says psalacha. You have to go and how do you say psal? Cut out. No, like when you knock the stone out of the mountain, like the quarry. Like quarry the mountain. I don't know how you say. Get the mountain. Get the rock. That was something that was only by the second luchas. Both of them, then Hashem wrote on them. But my point is that this is the same thing. There was a shofar part of the first lichus was a shofar, and then the second one had a shofar. It's part of the, and we did it ourselves. Very nice. We're so excited.
A shofar malchus.
Of Matan Torah. Also shofar of Rosh Hashanah seems to mostly talk about that. Of getting the new lichas shniyos, which comes together with Yud Gimel Sharachmim and all these things. Or what was the other thing you could say? Yeah, it's connected with that. The other way I wanted to say it was that this is also very interesting. So the Seder Olam, when he made this shtetl and figured out that there were 120 days, it was important for him to say that when it says the pasuk is I brought the Seder Olam here somewhere. It says here afterwards I call it Seder Olam. That's the last pasuk in Ekev, right? That last pasuk that nobody knows where it fits in. It says, so he explains what does Kiyam Rishonim mean. So he says Kiyam Rishonim means like the first 40 days when he went to get and he explains how is it. Rashi brings this over there. How is it Kiyam Rishonim? Not over there, somewhere he brings Rashi. How is it Kiyam Rishonim? Ma Rishonim merutzim, af shniyim merutzim. And more matem mitzuyim bekas. So like there was Yom Rishonim and Yom not Rishonim. Yom Mitzuyim, the 40 days that he was in Nisnapel, that was bekas. He took him 40 days to get the cast away. But now he was back to Rutzen, just like, so in other words, like we see, like it says in the Pshat, because like Moshe, first Hashem was Moichel, and then he said, okay, let's go make new luchas. So it's not that Yom Kippur the Slicha happened. Really, the Slicha happened on Chodesh Elul. So now we have a question. So then why isn't Yom Kippur on Chodesh Elul? It seems like the whole story of getting the Yidgol Midas was really on Chodesh Elul. So why isn't there Yom Kippur then? And
to
to
do
do
40 days to use them.
what?
You need 40 days to use them.
To use the
Yidgol Midas.
yeah. So what the Seder Olam says in the next article, it says B'yorad b'yasara b'tishre v'hoyeh mekappirim v'bisram shenisratz lefnei makah. I think that this bisram is a very important word. So in other words, apparently there was no time in between the 240 days to go tell the Yidden about this. So he was there for 40 days. Okay, you know what? Go bring new lichas. He right away went and did it. And then it took 40 days to learn the lichas again, or whatever it was. And then finally, after 40 days, he came back and told the Yidden, we're good. So really, there's a big lag between when the slicha happened for Moshe and when it was told to the
Maybe it's not
to the
actually
people.
good until manifest.
Yeah, you could say such a pshat, but it doesn't say that here. It says a bisram. The Seder Olam doesn't think like you could say that like this is part of the slicha. That would be a pshat. It doesn't say it's interesting. You could say this both in the Gemara when Tanis when it says Yemei Kippurim is Yom Slicha v'Mechila Yom Shnit B'Lichas Shneas. Seems to be two different things. You could say this slicha and then like the finalization, like okay, we got the new check or got the new thing. You could say that. I don't want to say that for some reason today. Because of the Samitzoyim Meritzim. He very clearly wants to say that the Yom Mar Kiyam Merishonim, Mar Rishonim Beratzon, Afachlein Beratzon. He doesn't say that the real Ratzon is only on Yom Kippur. He seems to very seriously take. I think this is the simple prat. If you read the story in the parsha, you see that first there was being Moichel, and then there was the Psalicha. It's not like, of course, maybe it's connected. I'm not saying it's not connected, but it seems very clearly that the Ritzah, the Haratza, however you call it, the Bing Meritza, was actually before that. Just only, I think that nobody knew about it. So they were never fasting for 40 days. Or whatever, doing tshuva, because they didn't realize that they're good already. And I finally Moshe came, I said, Shon Alt Gvein Git was ready to shkoy the Elul. That's the shoe that he did a whole Elul, because it was already a Elul. It was okay. So one of the pshutim that I want to say is that this is the difference between the two kinds of Yidden.
It's also, I think, like irony about Tshuva that it really worked the day it started.
Yeah, exactly. Like Daniel. And the Gemara in Tanis says that. From here we learned that you're Mekabel, it's already enough. Mekabel Tanis. Yeah. Right, there was a guy that...
It worked because over the 40 days he did Tshuva. Right?
Maybe. Well, maybe that's the whole trick. It says a medrash. It was what you're saying. I was thinking. It made me think of a medrash. There's a medrash also on the same pasuk. Ki imcha slicha leman tivore. Says the medrash in Psikta, I think on Tishrei. One of them says mifkedes hoisa slicha imcha mirash Hashanah. Just you hit it, so we should do tshuva. In other words, ki imcha slicha. The slicha is with you. Why leman tivore? So basically, really, Hashem was moichel from the first second. Just he wanted people to be scared, so we only. that there's like this kasha of the Ran, like why is Rosh Hashanah before Yom Kippur? It's not really true. Really, Yom Kippur was not Rosh Chodesh. We just scare you for 40 days, so you should actually do tshuva, and then we tell you, you know what, it's all gone.
Why are more Calvinist shot like?
Or,
If you figure out you're saved.
right, it's lemafreya.
What? Yeah.
It's lemafreya, right?
It's not lemafreya.
It means that you will
either saved or you weren't saved, but you prove it by.
by being saved.
Maybe that's why Moshe went up and down.
So your tshuva was either tshuva or wasn't tshuva the day you started. Just the 40 days will let you know what it was.
Like tshuva was called meloilim. Really, it was before.
Maybe he went
Hashem
up and
kodim
down
sheyachta.
because of that. Originally, he asked for before he came down already. He asked for it. Comes down, then goes back up, right?
In the first story, in Pashas
Right.
Kesisa, that's what it seems to
Make
say.
them do tshuva.
I know, it seems that you could say such a pshat. I was thinking, and then I was thinking maybe it's really the other way around. Like first I was thinking maybe Moshe, maybe Moshe, like there's this like thing, like Chassidish thing. The Rebbe has to scream at the Yidden and tell Hashem that the Yidden are good. So Moshe, that's what Moshe did. It's like to Hashem, he said, then he went and told the Yidden, Hashem is mad at you, but Hashem wasn't really mad anymore. But then I was thinking that it's really just the opposite, because he told everyone that they're good, even the yeah. Then I was thinking that it's really the opposite, because in Parshas Ekev it's really the opposite. Because in Parshas Ekev Moshe skips the whole thing of him punishing the Yidden, and it's just like Ahar under the egel, and Hashem was meichel you. So he only gives them the positive side. He doesn't tell, like I said, the Musar is not really Musar. It's really the opposite of Musar. Yeah, but then I was thinking another thing that I always think that there's like we learn here, like in our Rambam, there's two different levels. There's Moshe learning Torah from Hashem, and then he's teaching it to us. And the Ramban talks about this a lot of times, that sometimes the Torah says this one, sometimes that one. And I think that there's two different kinds of Eden. There's some people that they only receive the Torah after it was already given, like formulated, like you've got it. Now it's formulated, now you come to the Sheklali, and you get the whole thing. Those are the people that found that Yom Kippur, that in the Besura of the Mechila. But there's other people that they're like Moshe himself, like really to learn Torah. We have a lot of things like Torah is nitna b'mem yoyim. It's not really nitna b'mem yoyim. It's nitna l'Moshe b'mem yoyim. To us, it was given afterwards. However, 40 years, I don't know, however long it took. This whole 40 days that we think of always, like it says, the different things. What's mem? What do we have to do because of Torah? It was 40 days. I don't remember, but something. Thanks, Nash. Some medrash in it, no? Ich weiß nicht. Point is that that's the step of the creation of the Torah. It's not the step of the receiving the fully formed Torah. It's like the Iber of the Torah, like it's still being created or still being given to Moshe. And the real thing, or the real thing of Dong Tshuva, with my pshat of Dong Tshuva, means the Torah, the Zohar says that Tshuva is Bina, and Bina is the mother of the Torah. That's what it means, Tshuva continual olam, really continual Torah. That's the Zohar's interpretation of the story that he tells many times, that the Torah came, the Malachim came to Hashem before he created the world, and said these people are going to sin, and he said no problem, but they were created out of Tshuva. They'll go back and do Tshuva. So the Tshuva is the thing that creates the Torah. Actually, that's the Mem. That's also the Remez of Mem. Anyways. So these people that they start from El, what they're saying is that we're not waiting for Moshe to come down the mountain and tell us. We'll go up the mountain with him and find out what's going on. That's, again, you can't be a Litvak and like stand after the mountain and make that El. That the whole idea is to start the thing like when Moshe started it. Maybe we should even start 40 days before, by Shavuos B'Tammuz, I don't know. And the point is that it's a whole different mahalach. So basically, that's my thing. I think that the Medrash and the Eden that did Elul is because they understood the concept very differently than the people that do Aseres and Tshuva. And you can't confuse it. You can't do Aseres and Tshuva in the way of Elul. If you're an Elul person, then you have a whole different understanding of the subject, and try to say this in all these ways. And maybe there's more ways to say them, or like maybe the real ways, like you're saying. But 40 days is not enough. It's also bad, not good enough. Like once you get the Ben Ezra and things like that, like the Rambam says, Mitzvah is really to understand. 40 days is not. You don't understand anything from B'Shchodesh El to Yom Kippur. Maybe from like 40 years. Maybe 40 days is the Rebbe for 40 years, like it says about the Meraglim. 40 years is not enough either. Anyway,
It's hard to try to
do what?
faster
Yeah, it didn't work.
than
Anyway, that's how my shira and how Elul is the same shira as how the Torah was given. That's what I wanted to think. But it's just a pshat.
Because the Torah is true, is to do true.
Well, no, the way you could say that, but the way that I would say it is more like doing tshuva means that the Torah doesn't work and needs a tikkun. I think that Torah itself, like I say, we have to repeat the whole Torah. Well, maybe it's the same one, but we didn't understand it. I don't know. It needs to be understood. Tshuva is bina, means understanding. Like it says, levavayovim v'shav. If you understand, so you have to re-understand, and re-understand not just like the Torah, like how many kiss to blow. You have to re-understand what it means to be a Torah. Obviously, if you're not perfect at, you didn't understand it yet. And it takes a long time. If you go to Har Sinai for 40 days, try to understand what it means. And then, but you could have it, then like you get the luchas, like okay, now you can put it in a box. But we have to make it before you can put it in a box. That's the whole thing of psalach. Huh? Yeah. Yeah, maybe we should understand what the Yidgam Midas says, then we'll understand how, but I don't know if we will. A lot of different things about it.
Random or on this Moshe has. Hashem says, I'm going to make a better nation.
Mm-hmm.
Moshe says, no, what are we trying? So